Acknowledging our truth can be a blissful journey and cathartically rewarding, but it can also cause great confusion because, in a sense, we're in between two worlds. No longer who our families told us who we are, but not yet the person we know ourselves to be. Physically, this can manifest as illness in the body as we struggle to clear blockages and release old thinking patterns. Also, from clearing old wounds that we never healed in the past within our energy systems. For example, as a child, I envisioned myself being as a singer, collaborating with famous artists, and sharing my gifts with the world. But after being discouraged by my father and envied by other members of my family, I gave up singing. Because as a child, I wanted them to love me. Obviously, of course, that's the number one necessity almost for a child, emotionally at least, is to be loved. So because that was more important to me, to be loved, I gave up on the other expressions of myself that allowed me to be me, such as sports, expressing myself through languages and learning new ways to communicate, and playing instruments. All of these things I found great joy and gratitude in. But because I excelled in all of these areas, and because I expressed myself so intuitively and unapologetically, it garnered a lot of jealousy, even from family members and at school. And so as a child, I didn't have friends. And that pained me greatly because I felt like I was shunned just for being me. You may have heard me talk about this in the past, but that's essentially what happened to me. And so soon after I gave up all of these things, very soon after, I fell into a deep depression because I gave up expressing myself for the sake of others. And if I did express myself, I would often shrink back if I felt I was drawing too much attention. So back then, I shrunk myself to become so small that the person they wanted me to be became who I thought I really was. So small that there was almost no part of me left. Fast forward to this time now that we're in, and I was led to be present with God, with Source, to just be mindful. And it felt like there was something important that Source wanted to convey to me. And it wasn't without its challenges, but not long after, I found an old journal from my childhood days. I was only in the second grade. There were a couple of journals, but one of them was from when I was in the second grade. And my mom kept everything from those days. Like, if it was a tissue that we sneezed on, she would have kept it. She literally kept everything. And so I am grateful for that because it became very instrumental in me and setting me on the path that I'm on now, because I got to go back to my old childhood belongings and just read my journals, and I saw the way that I spoke and how I was so positive and uplifting all of the time. Often, not all the time, but it reminded me of the things that I loved to do as a child, and I was nagging my parents to go outside all of the time. And I wrote a lot about running because I love to run, and exercising and how that was so important to me. And just even family time I valued, even though our family was dysfunctional and I grew up in an abusive home as a child, even if things are wrong, there you still value the time that you have with family when things are good. So it was very interesting and heartwarming to be able to look back at my my childhood in that lens. So anyway, as I peruse through the pages gently and stroking the pages, stroking them over with all of the nostalgia and the tears in my eyes, I marveled over how pure I was back then. And in another journal, I found a song. I'd written a song. And at that point, I believe I was about 12 years old. I remember that I used to sing to God. I used to sing to God. And this song was about Him. And I just, even now, I feel it in my chest. I feel so warm that I was developing so intuitively. Like, I was learning how to dance. I was learning, really embodying my voice and really stepping out and presenting myself and sharing my dreams to be a singer with my family and with my parents. And I was just developing so intuitively. And so writing a song, especially writing a song to God, that really let me know that, yeah, this is like soul. This is a soul level thing. Like, this is a desire from my soul. And I thought that was so amazing that even back then I had that connection with God, even though I really don't remember much of that. So in that moment, I realized that Source wanted me to start to sing again. And the idea of it to me was immediately ridiculous. And I snorted. I snorted aloud. Yeah, okay. Because it'd been so long since I embodied that version of myself, that truth. It's been over 2 decades, and the person that I identified as who I was, the people pleaser and the broken brown girl, I identified with her more than I identified with my truth, because I had spent more time in that identity than I had in my own truth. I hadn't really even taken anything that was truthfully who I am into adulthood, aside from the desire to motivate people and want to help people. That stuck with me. But my expressions, the way that I express myself, the way that I showed up in life, even my connection with God, it all just crumbled. So I gave that up. So when I saw that I was being led to sing again and to write music, to say that I was discouraged was an understatement. I thought it was impossible, and I thought that it was ridiculous that Source was even leading me to this, and I felt that there was no way it's impossible. But the days passed and the synchronicities started to flood in, and I started to hear songs in my head beautiful songs when I woke in the middle of the night. I remember rolling over one night and I asked God, is being a singer really for me? Like, do you really want me to make music? And immediately after that, I started to hear a beautiful song come through in my head. And it was just confirmation. It was just the creator confirming, yes, I want you to sing, I want you to write music, and I want to express through you, with you. And that's just a beautiful example of source confirming my truth and the direction that I am being led in. And so you may have your own confirmations, your own stories, but that's just one example that I was confirmed. And there were many stories like that, synchronicities after synchronicities. I couldn't even deny it anymore. So I mean, I had dreams. I was even led to a vocal coach who completely understood my exact story because she had experienced the exact same thing. And I had hoped and prayed for a vocal coach, and, just to be able to learn my voice again. Literally, I'm learning my voice and discovering my voice all over again. So I picked up my guitar and I started to sing. And I had a guitar in my childhood days, but like I told you, I gave up on a lot of the ways that I used to express myself. And I always wanted to learn guitar when I was younger. My parents even got me one, which I'm very grateful for, but I just never really got into it. I never got down with it. So, my mother actually recently purchased a guitar for me. And this day that I was given my guitar, I remember feeling like the creator was angry at me, like I was doing something wrong. And then that day I was showered with so many gifts, and the guitar being one of them. And it made me really question, I just felt like, why are these things, like, why are you being so nice to me, to the person who had given them to me, which was my mom. And anyway, I'm getting off track, but it's just funny how a lot of the times we think that the creator may be angry with us, or maybe disapprove. Maybe we think that we are doing something that the creator is disapproving, when really in actuality the creator is gifting us with something for our future, and having so much compassion on us and loving us in ways that we can't even fathom, because we are not showing ourselves love. And so if we're not showing ourselves love, it's very difficult to tap into the love that's all around us. So I picked up my guitar and I started to sing. And I think that my guitar is literally a big instrument of just leading me into that creative and musical side of myself. When I picked up my guitar, I fell in love again. And I started to see myself in a new light as a musician. And it felt good. So it was around this time that I began to see a lot of blue, and my throat became sore. Like, even now, it's sore, just from reclaiming my truth, difficulty in speaking my truth, and learning how to voice my truth and to express it, to learn to be seen and to learn to be heard, lifting up my voice. I found that the only way to clear these blockages was to vehemently affirm my truth while pretty much yelling at the top of my lungs, clearing that blockage, those blockages within my throat. And it's a good thing that my mother wasn't home. I may not have felt comfortable doing so otherwise, but yeah, I've just been working on clearing blockages from my throat and affirming my truth. And in doing so, I've literally been feeling so much fear bubble up within me, just terrifying fear. It feels like shadows, like cockroaches crawling under my skin, and I never could have even imagined or fathomed that my body would react this way just from walking the path that I was led to walk, and returning back to my truth and using my voice and finding my voice again. But there's just so much fear that was held within my body that has, like I said, just been bubbling up, and it's been terrifying to say the least. And it's been a challenge to find that belief in self, believing in myself and trusting in this process when everything is changing, at such a rapid pace. My spiritual beliefs are being rocked, and my physical body is just under so much stress, and my nervous system. And of course, mentally we want to make sense of this, and so my brain has been working overtime trying to make sense of it. But I've just been having to learn to not fall back on old coping methods to get through this process, because that is what fueled my confusion when I would, instead of embodying who I am and expressing my truth through song, through music, through this podcast, through coming in front of you guys and sharing my pain and alchemizing that energy to benefit so that others will benefit, and allowing the abundance and the love to come to me. Instead of doing that, I was reverting back to my old ways, which was binge eating when I was stressed out, or just burying myself in the television because I didn't want to deal with the present moment because I felt so lost. So I guess I'm learning now to just keep moving forward and being the person that I've been shown that I am, to embody my truth even when it feels so frightening and uncomfortable on every level, body, mind, soul, spirit, energetically, on every level, just to move forward and believe that I can and that I'm worthy, and then just presenting myself and showing up in the world as being worthy and letting my blessings come through that. So I am very grateful because there was another young lady, I'll have to mention her, who talked about this, and I really feel like we're very much in maybe the same collective, or just our paths are very aligned. And so I'm very grateful to others who have come out and spoken about their time going through this process or a very similar process, because It inspires me also to give back to others, and to help and support others, which is like my whole shtick. But also, too, because I felt that it was only right for me to give when I received. It's only right because I received such a beautiful message in her speaking out. It inspired me also to give a message, hoping that it'll inspire someone else. It could be tomorrow, an hour from now, a year from now, or a few years from now, but at least I put the message out there, and at least it's there for someone to connect with. And if you're discouraged during this time, I know I'm getting a little bit off script, but it's okay, because all of this is connected, because family members may not understand you. You may feel alone and really struggling to establish boundaries, kind of like me, especially when you've grown up being so close to certain family members. It can be hard to and intimidating to establish those boundaries, especially when you are a victim of abuse. It may be difficult to stand up to the abuser or the narcissist. But if you are struggling with any of those, then just have some compassion on yourself and work at it over time, because this is a very difficult process, and there are going to be struggle. Like, it's inevitable that you're going to struggle with something. We are going to struggle with some things. And so we just have to have compassion on ourselves and have to be loving towards one another, and especially towards ourselves, because we are literally like children right now. We are relearning and rewiring, and we are taking the fear that we developed from our childhood. And that's very serious, because children, the fear that children develop from childhood is like, it's like they develop that fear thinking that if they don't obey, then their whole survival could be on the line. Children rely on their parents for everything. And so if a parent rejects you, or if a parent says, no, that's bad, then that is very serious to that child, because going against them is like impossible. So we are dealing with very, very serious fears. And so our bodies are the fear that is bubbling up within our bodies when we're processing this fear. It's very intense and very stressful, and it's easy to revert back to those old coping habits just to feel better in the moment, like binge eating or drinking or smoking or whatever it is. But just keep showing up and having compassion on yourself, and realize that you're not going through this alone. So many of us are going through this, and it's because we are transitioning into a new world where we are being required to show up as our authentic selves, and to create from our hearts, and to express from our hearts, and to also receive with our hearts. So that's why this time is so sacred and necessary for a lot of us, because our survival depends on it. Because the old ways don't work anymore. Like the linear way of thinking, it just won't work anymore. It doesn't work anymore. So that is why Source is bringing us through this time, so that we can embody our truth and live in the abundance that we were always meant to live in, and with the people that we are meant to be with. They may not be family by blood, but on a soul level, they will be. Hopefully, at least. So, anyway, back to my story. Right. So, like I said, a lot of the time that my mom was gone, I would really affirm my truth. And the way that I determined whether something was a truth or not, typically in the evening time, because in the evening is really when we get understanding, especially when we're eating a lot of greens. It's the time of understanding, the morning and the evening. And so I would meditate in the evening, and I would ask if there was a certain feeling in my body. I would ask, where is this coming from? What is this? What does this mean? And if I listened quietly enough, an answer would come. This is the fear. This is the fear from my dad, or this is the fear from my mom, and this is what they thought, and so they projected it onto me. And so I had to really talk through and explain to myself, no, he thought that he was unworthy, she felt that she was unsafe, but that doesn't mean that I'm unsafe. That doesn't mean that I am unworthy. I am worthy, and I am safe, and I do want to receive love that is worthy of me. And there are loves out there that are gentle and that are compassionate. And so I literally just, like, I had to rewrite the story. I had to rewrite the story. So, while I affirmed my truth, I envisioned the person who projected that limiting belief on me. And imagined, as I affirmed my truth, I was literally imagining them standing in front of me while I'm screaming at them, yes, I can, or I am worthy, I am a singer, I am loved, I am safe. And this is also where detachment comes into play, because detaching from the people who told you that you couldn't be, or that you couldn't do, is essential. Because if we stay attached to these people, or at the very least, if we don't draw boundaries, then we are still reflecting who they told us that we are, what we could and couldn't do. We're still accepting that. And the law of reflection dictates that who you surround yourself with, you become. And so if you surround yourself with people who feel like they are unworthy, then you will become someone who feels like they are unworthy. That is the law of reflection. That's what I call it anyway. But anyway, mentally, this time could look very foggy. You may feel confused or in limbo about certain things, even when you desperately want to make decisions. Like, others may be pressuring you to make decisions, but do your best to establish and enforce your boundaries again, and iterate your need for space, and be gentle on yourself, because, like I said, we're going into our childhood mode. Like, we are going in and rewiring our brains and our stories, and this is a very fragile and delicate place that I believe humans are not meant to stay in for long. Like, in between identities, that is. So, this is where a person may develop multiple identities if they place themselves under too much stress or pressure from outside sources, um, due to their inability to make decisions, or at least certain choices that they feel they must take. And this is just my opinion from my experience. Um, they might create several versions of themselves who could handle the undertakings of their current situations or future situations. Um, if you go even further and push yourself under more stress and pressure, one may even begin to hear voices arguing in their head. And if you go even further and if you fail to have compassion for yourself during this time, if you fail to implement self-love and gentleness and patience with yourself, then you can just really just start to break and snap your mind. So like I said, like here you could like start hearing voices, or perhaps these are the different voices of your consciousness. But further than that could be the taking of one's own life as they struggle to choose themselves, who they want to be, or who they feel like they should be, or who they think that they can be. You know, all of these different versions in their mind as they struggle to choose which one versus who they are told they are or should be. It can just be very stressful. And I'm coming to you and I'm saying all of this because I have literally been experiencing this. I haven't had much compassion on myself because I have felt so much pressure because of the situation that I'm in, the financial pressure, pressure from family members, and just pressure from myself because I want answers too. Of course, you know, like it's scary feeling all of these things, and it's uncomfortable. So of course we want to hurry up and get to the answer. And so I'm telling you this as someone who has experienced these thoughts or these symptoms or just these things, you know. So I'm just try to implement some side rails to keep yourself from going over the ledge, like meditation time, prayer time, self-love time, community. All of these things I need at least to do a better job of. But anyway, so I am not exaggerating when I say that this requires extreme patience with oneself. Like I said, lots of self-love and an environment where one feels safe. Okay? If not, and if you don't feel safe, such as in my case, then it doesn't matter how hard you try, you'd just be forcing a screw into a cork hole essentially and working against yourself. That's why you have to cultivate safety around you. You need to cultivate feeling safe. And I know that's very difficult when we are literally physically feeling fear just trickle up inside. I literally just feel like shadows and bugs crawling under my skin sometimes. Like it's insane, you guys. I know it sounds like I'm losing my mind, but I think this is the my body releasing fear. And our body is so sacred and so holy and awesome. It holds so many of the answers, But in order to get those answers, sometimes we have to go through, I think I've heard a couple of people call it the dark night of the soul. It's scary. But anyway, meditation, self-love, really listening to your body, eating gently, healthy. You may even need to do a couple of fasts, but the dangerous consequences come when we don't do these things. And I know that may sound extreme, but I'm here to tell the truth, guide someone who may need to hear this, and just be there as a friend. I know that, the negative consequences may seem extreme. It may sound insanely crazy. But for people who are used to being who everyone else wants them to be, choosing themselves literally feels dangerous and unsafe as they struggle to trust themselves. Like, that is literally what we're going through, because like I said, it really does go back to our childhood or our early days where, we felt like we needed to be who others told us to be. And in doing so, we lost essentially that trust within ourselves. So that's why this time could feel so scary and just so fearful, especially if you endured abuse, narcissism, especially if there were actual real physical dangers and violence within the home. Then your conscious will go back to that and remember that, and your body does too. It's like remembering that fear from an actual violent past. So we are learning to trust ourselves again. We are learning to embrace our truth again. We are learning to feel safe when everything within us tells us that we are unsafe. Yeah. I was thinking about this earlier, and I think what we are essentially doing when we are deciding, when we are choosing to really live our truth, like from a soul level, I think that at this point we are not only are we giving up our ego, but we are giving up our pride, which is our intuitive side. So we're pretty much giving up our intuition. And our intuitive side is responsible for warning us of dangers. And so it's extremely intimidating to go against one's intuition. Like, it's one thing to forego your ego, but to go against your intuition, especially as a woman, and to choose to trust that everything is okay, even though you have no evidence of it being okay, even when you can't feel God, even when you can't hear God, even when the situation feels and looks dangerous and you have family members screaming, yelling at you. It's extremely intimidating. And then you start to question, am I crazy? Am I literally losing my mind? Am I going crazy? And maybe, maybe on some level, you may be in a little bit crazy, but you're even more so, you're learning, you're becoming, you're like a butterfly in a cocoon. And I keep seeing butterflies, and yeah, just trusting that you are okay and that you are safe and that you are being held and that you are loved. It's extremely intimidating. But we can also find comfort in the fact that we're not going through this alone. I don't care when you listen to this. It could be 10 years from now. It could be 2 years from now. It could be a minute from now after I post this. There's always someone who has gone through this before you, who is going through it with you right now, and who is going to go through it after you. And maybe you come out with your own testimony and you become a light to someone else. That's how it works. That's how all of this works. That's how this goes. Learning to express ourselves authentically as the Creator created us to be, unapologetically, and to believe in ourselves. Not only express ourselves, but to believe that abundance will come to us, that love will come to us, that whatever we need and whatever we want will come to us, and really believing that we are worthy. This is a path that not everyone takes. I don't think I would have chosen this for myself if I wasn't led down this path, because it's extremely intimidating and it's extremely painful. It can be, at least. It can also be, like I said in the beginning, blissful when you really start to realize your power and realize who you are and actually feel yourself being the person that you see yourself to be. You know, it can be so cathartic and freeing and blissful, but the process to get to those points are also highly challenging. They can be challenging, but that's where we come in and we support one another, and we have compassion for ourselves, and we love ourselves, and we just try to develop and cultivate trust over time. And you'll get there, because if I can do it, you can do it. If she could do it, then I can do it. If he can do it, you can do it. We're all reflections of one another. It's just, what type of community do you want to reflect back to you? Anyway, I want to read a chapter from another book that I'm reading on narcissism and children who were raised in abusive homes with a narcissistic parent. I think I might make this a regular thing, maybe reading an excerpt from a book at the end of each podcast. I kind of like that. So, okay. This book is a New York Times bestseller, and it's called It's Not You: Identifying and Healing from Narcissistic People by Ramani Durvasula, PhD. Okay, I am going to read to you The Scapegoat. This is under chapter Understand your backstory. This is chapter 4. Understand your backstory. She had an inside and an outside now, and suddenly she knew how not to mix them. Quote by Zora Neale Hurston. The Scapegoat. Narcissistic people use and abuse other people to regulate their behavior and emotions, and that is where the scapegoat comes in. If you are the scapegoat, you received the bulk of your narcissistic parents' wrath and took the hardest psychological blows. You were probably blamed for behaviors you did not engage in, were given a disproportionate burden of chores, did not receive resources in the same manner as your siblings, and experienced all the aspects of narcissistic abuse from a very young age, including the worst of any physical abuse. All of this can result in any psychological harm. For example, Diane, the Smith family scapegoat, was facing numerous issues that may have long-term harmful impacts, including disordered eating and obsessive compulsive patterns that may have represented an attempt to stay safe in or cope with the family system. There are multiple reasons for scapegoating. The narcissistic parent perceived you as weak or undesirable, as a threat, such as in my case, or as vulnerable. The scapegoat becomes the primary repository for their narcissistic parent's projected shame. Or the scapegoated child may not, quote unquote, be the way the parent wants or is an insufficient source of validation. A boy with an athletic narcissistic father who decides to pursue the arts or isn't physically strong may be a scapegoat. Or it may be a child who does not conform to gender roles and expectations. Scapegoating can also be part of a larger dynamic called family mobbing, in which the entire family system targets the scapegoat, and siblings may go along to avoid the narcissistic parent's wrath. As a scapegoat, you may enter adulthood feeling deeply distanced, experiencing low self-esteem, and lacking a sense of belonging. You face one of two paths. The more problematic path leads you to continue to struggle with identity, self-esteem, and anxiety. Not only might you fall into trauma-bonded cycles in your adult relationships, but you may also remain stuck in the vortex of the family and eternally try to win over the narcissistic parent. The better path allows you to set boundaries or distance yourself from the harmful members of your family. You may also be a hybrid who got away but still struggles with identity, self-esteem, and anxiety. The role of the scapegoat can carry a lot of pain and even complex trauma, and that's when trauma-informed therapy becomes essential to address these impacts. If you are the scapegoat of your family, work on finding your voice separate from your family system. Cultivate new sources of support, develop a chosen family, and engage in activities that are self-affirming and allow you to develop as a person independent of the invalidating system. I thought that this part of the chapter was so powerful because I actually cried when I read this because she just described what I have been going through so well and validated my need to separate from my family, which the idea I struggled with, for a while, and especially from my mom. So, but it, it just supports the necessity to prioritize ourselves. We are definitely worthy of it. And I mean, are we going to live in someone else's shadow forever?